Hello, my name is Owen, and welcome to another week of our Malazan Book of the Fallen reread. Today is week 2 of our Memories of Ice reread, which means we're going through part 2. As you notice, I'm at a new angle of the room. Now I won't have a shadow on half my face because the light's directly on my face. See, I'm learning things. Just like I'm learning more about Malazan. What a segue. As always, guys, there's so much to talk about. It's been like 10 days since I filmed these videos, so like I feel like I'm a little rusty on how to do it, so I feel like it's gonna be another chaotic one where I'm bouncing all over the place. But looking at my notes, like there's just so much that happens in this part, and it's insane. And the parts that I'm thinking are the most crazy parts are not the things that I focused on the first reread. So I think the first time I read it, I was really focused on like the bridge burners, the army, the Malazan army marching and stuff like that, and like the siege. Everything else was kind of like by the wayside. Now I'm dialed in. I'm dialed in to Talk's storyline. Listen, I'm not gonna tell you all the things I'm dialed in at because I'm gonna talk about it later in more depth. But let's just start with one of the main important things it's focused on in this part is the dynamic between Trake, the first hero, and Fenrir, the god of war, the boar of summer, right? And Trake is the tiger of summer. And there's kind of like a dynamic going on that we're introduced to that like Trake thinks he's a god. He's like, yeah, I'm a god now. And everyone's like, nah, get out of here. You're just a first hero, whatever that means. But then there's a lot of like emphasis like Trake is rising, Fenrir's in trouble. And we know in Deadhouse Gates that Fenrir was summoned to the real world because Heberic touched his own chest with his magic hands. Sure thing, whatever. But we're not entirely sure like how this lines up, if it was just like a prophecy of this thing happening. But we know that like it's true, like Fenrir's in danger. And someone's gonna have to step up and be this god of war, essentially. And Trake is gonna be the guy. So another thing to emphasize is Fenrir followers are back in a big way. There are so many Fenrir followers in Deadhouse Gates. You had Heberic, you had the sailors, and then that was it. But in this one, the Grey Swords, Fenrir is their god. So it is extremely important to them, like obviously that their god survived and stuff like that, and they have a very deep knowledge. And we learned that there's these titles that these Grey Swords have. They have the Mortal Sword, which is like the leader of this mercenary company. We have the Shield Anvil, Itkovian. We're not really sure like what he does, but he's there, and I love him. And then we have the Destrian, which is kind of like the wizard / shaman, who's like the most connected to Fenrir. And like they keep talking about this like council of priests where it's like Wrath, whatever god it is, and like their Wrath Fenrir is like, I'm the most powerful, most devoted guy, and they're like, yo, like should you tell him like you're literally like the god's right hand man essentially? And he's like, no. I'm so powerful, I don't even need to tell this guy that I'm so powerful. That's how powerful I am, and that's how you know he's powerful. But he's like, yeah, like my god is so scared right now. And he tells like Itkovian, he's like, do you understand what that means? He's like, no. That is horrifying though, and it is. So they know that something's going on with their god. They know something's about to go down, and we see a little bit more about Trake later, but I'm gonna say that for when I talk about Talk. And sticking on Itkovian for a little bit, he was the guy that I was talking about last part where like we're getting introduced to a new POV character who I absolutely adore. Itkovian is that guy. And it's not because he's a badass, which he is. It's because like he's so, and all the Grey Sword guys are like this, really. Dude, they're just so calm and they seem so composed, and they're just like stand-up guys. Like the Mortal Sword's a little stressed out, right? He's got a siege incoming, but Itkovian, during the scene like where he's out on the field and they fight the Kachin Chamale for the first time, first of all, as someone rightly pointed out to me, I did forget to mention them. There's freaking dinosaurs with sword arms running around in Malazan. What? Dinosaurs with sword arms? It's the stupidest thing. It's so stupid. When I say it out loud, this sounds like the worst character. That's so stupid. Dinosaurs with arms for swords for arms? But they're here, and man, are they horrifying. Because they're undead. They're an ancient race, but they're back, and they're undead. And they're just like wreaking havoc with their sword arms. They kill our boy Harlow, who sacrifices himself, sending Gruntle in a spiral. But Itkovian is fighting them with the Grey Sword. They get absolutely demolished, and then he goes up to the recruit, who he clocked earlier, like, okay, this lady, like, she needs to be like with her like supervisor essentially, because like she has no idea what she's walking into. Her supervisors die, she's left without mentors, and he's like, listen, he's like, are you okay? And she's like, yeah, I'm fine. He's like, listen, like, you get killing more of these dinosaurs with freaking sword arms isn't gonna, like, there's something, like, you saw some dramatic stuff, and like, I just want to make sure you're okay. She's like, I'm fine. He's like, go home. He's like, go home. Like, this is gonna mess you up, and I want to protect you. So he's a stand-up guy. I really like that scene from him. He is compassion incarnate, and there's a lot of like aspects of introducing the theme of compassion in this book and like being a compassionate person. And there's a big one in this part, going back to Talk, because I love Talk's storyline. I love Talk. He's like one of my favorite characters of all time. Anyway, we also learn a reveal. It is confirmed that the word Panion in the Panion domain is a jagged word. I kind of like shoved you all in that direction in the last part. I'm like, oh guys, I wonder what the like. We're introduced to a lot of jagged history, the memories of ice. Oh, what's going on? And then later, also, when Talk meets the leader, the Panion Seer, he's like, oh, like this guy reminds me of a child. I don't know. Jagged word, child, the prologue. Hey man, I'm not gonna give it to you. I'm just gonna guide you to that place, and you can make the connections there, because they outright say, "Oh, this guy reminds me of a child." Anyway, that's not that important. It is important, but that's for you. It's for you. And then the other thing that happens, the big thing, because I don't want to talk about Talk yet. There's just so much Talk stuff. Harlow's sacrifice for Gruntle. Gruntle goes into like a drunken stupor in Capistan, which is the city where the Grey Swords are in, and we kind of get the main goal or the main setup for the story, right? Because Quick Ben finds out that like the crippled god is poisoning Burn, and that story unfolds a little bit with him exploring that, and then him getting like the Barghast spirit, which I'll talk a little bit more of that too in this video. But it doesn't seem like that's moving fast enough to be the main plot, right? We think that the crippled god is behind the Panion domain, either in a direct way or an indirect way by this corrupting of this Panion Seer. We're not entirely sure what the connection is, but we know that this chaotic magic is behind this whole thing. So it seems like the crippled god has this like, the front for him in this book is the Panion domain, right? And the goal of this story so far is the Grey Swords need to hold Capistan for 6 weeks. They need to hold out. And everyone's like, it's impossible, you can't do it. There's literally millions of guys running at us. They're all crazy cannibals. There's no way we could do it. And it's kind of a chain of dogs moment, right? Where it's like, these guys have to do an impossible thing. Can they do it? That will be the premise for the next part, right? So that's kind of set up there, because we still don't really see any action in terms of the siege that we know is coming. It's kind of like this foreboding thing over this whole part. It's like, they're coming, they're going to destroy us, we've got to hold up for 6 weeks, you can't do that, we have to do that, we have no other choice. And Dujek and Kaladin Brood and Animator Rake, they're all on their way. So, with that being said, in Capistan, the other big thing is the Barghast. And the Barghast really, and I didn't make this connection the first time I read it, it's very like Native American-esque in the scene where Hatan, I think her name is, or she comes into the council and she's like, listen, like, you guys literally built your entire city on our burial site. Which is something that happens in America literally almost everywhere. And they're like, listen, like, you don't build buildings on top of your graveyards, so why are you doing it to us? And she's like, listen, I don't want you guys to move out. I understand that it happened thousands of years ago. I just want you guys to acknowledge that this is our land and that you built on top of it. And I want my barrow uncovered. I want these ancient bones of my people. Because my father, Humbraltar, is trying to unite all the tribes, and we need this. We need this body of our ancient ancestors. I need them. And they're like, no, you're wrong. She's like, all right, I'm going to do it. And she does it, and she unveils these things. Because there's a lot of talk about the Barghast spirits and how they work. And the thing I found interesting in this part, in a book called Memories of Ice, is, like I said in the first part, they say the word memories a lot. And the problem with my first part was, like, they said it a lot, but I couldn't really find, like, okay, like, is it meaningful, or do they just say that word? This one, there was a lot of cases where the word memories was used in a very deep, like, thematic sense. Because the culture of the Barghast is developed extraordinarily interestingly in this part. And it's not something I cared about in the slightest, right? So first of all, we learned that that Toblakai and Trell and Barghast are all kind of like subspecies of the same like origin, right? They're all very related. And we know, obviously, the Tobakai was in Deadhouse Gates. And then we know that the Mapo Trell is a Trell? Are they called Trell? And now I'm confused. Whatever Mapo is he? I think I confused myself. Anyway, they're all like subspecies of this kind of jacked people, right? So we learn that about them. We also learn that they're spirits. One spirit we meet is Talamandus, right? And he kind of guides Quick Ben through these corrupted warrens that the crippled god is like poisoning them. You can't use magic anymore. He kind of uses the Barghast spirit magic to like protect Quick Ben and like act as a little guide. And then he helps Mallet heal Trots later on in the book. But he has this great speech where it's like the Barghast people have forgotten, or it's been so long that they now fear us, and like we are their ancestors. We are the ones that they should like be worshiping, or they should show respect to, but we're so powerful that they're actually afraid of us, and they've forgotten that we want to help them, essentially. And they only rely on like their younger spirits, and the younger spirits are weaker, so they'll be able to like be dominated or be trapped or be like put away. So there's kind of like this forgetting thing there. And then they also talk about like the Moranth. Like the Black Moranth is like this, like the ones who had like the Moranth mission, the explosives, and they work for the Malazan Empire. We also learned that they are related to the Barghast, and the Barghast hate the Moranth. And I can't remember his name right now. It's blanking. But the one, why can't I remember his name? He's the one that's like, he has like the quarrels, and he helps like Paran get to like the Barghast side. He's like, yeah, like their memory, he says, their memory is false of why they hate us. They remember something incorrectly about something that happened in the past, and they hate all the Moranths for basically no reason. Like, we should be allies. And there's even a part where they say like the spirits of the Barghast love the Moranth, but the people don't, because they have a false memory there. And this whole theme with the Barghast people is their loss of memory. Their loss of memory that all the tribes should work together because they're all dependent on the same ancestors. They forget that the ancestors are there to help them. They forget that the Moranth are not actually their enemies. This loss of memory, this distortion of memory, is actively contributing to the degradation of their culture, and leading to like this kind of like civil war that we're seeing. Like, we're not seeing them fighting each other, but we know that Humble Tar is trying to bring them together, and we hear these factions that refuse to work with him, that refuse to band together to fight against Hispanian Domain, which I think is extremely interesting for a book called Memories of Ice. Speaking of Memories of Ice, the title of the book gets name dropped when Baljag and Talk have like a moment. Tool says that, he's like, oh, it's like the Memories of Ice, like your spirits have been bonded, which I thought was an interesting name drop. But I'm still not ready to talk about Talk yet. I'm not ready to go there, because the last thing I want to say, the last two things I want to say before we get to that juicy stuff, last three things I want to say, because I keep on going forever and ever. First off, Whiskey Jack and Corlat, my man, he finally, listen, she straight up said, like, listen, it's not often that Tistandi bed mortals. That's essentially what she did. He's like, hey, I'm not one to say no. So respect the Whiskey Jack. And also, we just get some great, like, Whiskey Jack, like, how great of a leader he is, how great of a guy he is, when he's just, like, walking amongst the soldiers and just, like, talking to them casually. And, like, Corlat's like, she's like, you literally don't know what you do to these people. You're so charismatic, you're so genuine, that people would, like, literally die for you, and you don't even realize. That's how cool you are. She's like, I hate it. And she goes, my boy Whiskey Jack, my boy. The other thing is, Paran talks about how, and also the Pandian Seer talks about this too, the hold of beasts is open for the taking, whatever that means. And Paran compares it to like, oh, is this what Dancer and Kelevin saw when they saw the Throne of Shadow? Someone could claim that. And Paran's like, I could do that. I could do that. But like, why would I want to? And he's like, I'm not important. And then he has stomach cramps because he obviously is important. That's just a side note. Unpack that as you will. I can barely think of it. And then the other big thing that happens is with the crippled god himself. There's this character, Gethel, who comes in. He's like the herald of Hood, and he kind of gets like shamed because like he runs into like the gray swords and the Talana Mask. They're like, Jagged, it's a Jagged. And he's like, I'm the herald of Hood. And like, shut up, you're annoying. And like slashes his face. Then Hood's like, yeah, like, you're too emotional. Get out of my sight. And then he becomes the herald of the crippled god because, you know, he's weak-willed. What a loser. Gets to 4 and immediately joins the big bad. I hate this guy. He's so annoying. But we learned that the crippled god has started his own house, the House of Chains. The implications are kind of fuzzy for me still, but essentially he's entering the deck of dragons. He's entering like the structure of magic, which is like, they say it opens him up to attack because like he has his own physical realm, I guess, now that people can like infiltrate. But he also gets certain benefits from joining the game and like having his own house and having his own followers. And then we also, towards the end, Kalor becomes the High King, or it's heavily implied he's going to take this High King of the House of Chains position. And they say that the crippled god can't control you, Kalor, but you are granted this power by taking this thing, right? And we also learn that he takes these alchemies to make him not like turn into a pile of dust because he was cursed by Gabriel back in the day. Now, finally, we can talk about my boy Tok the Younger. So the first part, it's pretty chill. He's traveling with like the most overpowered characters of all time. You got Tool, you got the Segula, you got Lady Envy, and you got Baljag and the other one, Gareth. And he has this moment with Baljag where like his eye like bonds with them, and then like he like sees into the history, and like they're soul bonded, and he's later like called like the one with the wolf eye. Like they're super like connected somehow. We're not really sure how that's gonna play out or why that happened, right? And then he also has the moment where he sees through Trake's eyes, and he witnesses Trake's death by the Kachane Shamale, and Trake is met with Tool's sister, who is a Talanamas, but not a Talanamas, just an Amas, because she's just a normal human. I think that's how that works, the naming structure. But she didn't do the undead ritual, and she's like, listen, like, Trake, you're got to die, but you're gonna be something better, because K. Rool needs you. And he's like, what? He's like, oh, see, like, you're human again, you're not just a beast. And he dies, and Tok's like, what? And then also we learn that Lady Envy is also working for K. Rool. So K. Rool is pulling the strings, and we learned also too, there's a moment where he's like, I'm so scared. He's talking to Lady Envy. He's like, I'm so scared of the crippled god because the Warrens are my blood, and he's poisoning me. I'm dying, Burn's dying, we're all dying. I am assembling an A squad, and then K. Rooley, I love that, K. Rooley, who worships an elder god. Guys, come on, can't we say it? He says to Gruntle, he's like, Gruntle, listen, I know you'd like to just go sit at the bar, but maybe someone will have use for you soon. My name is K. Rooley. I serve an elder god. Name all the elder gods you know on your fingers. Anyway, we could say it. I'm not going to, we can say it. Anyway, so Gruntle's going to be important, guys. Just saying. Okay. So there's that part. And then, like, we kind of learn, like, they're just kind of going on an adventure, and, like, they go to, like, the temple and stuff like that. But the big thing that happens, first of all, Tool names Tok Errol Fey. He's like touched by stone, which I thought was very interesting, because then he talks about stone obelisk. And if you watch my Deadhouse Gates videos, the obelisk, obviously, like they say in the book, I think they say in this one too, they definitely said it multiple times, Deadhouse Gates, it represents time, past, present, and future. Obelisk wasn't active in Seven Cities because they kept repeating the history. They couldn't get past the past, essentially. They couldn't learn. They couldn't advance to the future. That's why they needed the Duker and the historians to learn for the past. Very similar themes here with memories going on. And this one's like I said in the last video, it's like the second step, right? If you have somebody that remembers things, it becomes a memory, which is like the next step of people taking those memories and like advancing to the future, right? So saying that Tok is touched by stone, touched by the obelisk, implies that like his vision is related to time aspect. Either it's because like he's seeing visions of the past, like he did with Baljag, he's seeing visions of the present, he sees with Trake, and how will this vision help him, right? And then he's visited by the voice of K. Rool, and K. Rool says, I need you to free the people of the Panian Domain. And Tok's like, what? Me? He's like, yeah, you. And you're gonna hate me for what happens to you next. And Tok's like, okay, weirdo. And I missed that the first time I read it. And I missed that the second time I read it, because obviously then like Tok hangs out with him a little bit. He's like, you know what, like screw you guys, I'm gonna get killed if I hang out with you. I'm gonna join the enemy army as an undercover spy and just pretend I'm a cannibal, and everything will be fine. Which, like, the first time I read it sounded really stupid. The second time I read it, I'm like, what is this plan? The dumbest plan of all time. But then when I was looking through my notes, I did mark that, like, K. Rool like sent him on this path, because obviously then we know what happens. He's just marching with the army. He refuses to eat human flesh, and he's summoned to the Panian Seer. The Panian Seer like, oh, like, hey, Tok, like, how's it going, buddy? I know you're trying to kill me. Here's eternal torment. And he puts this healing thing on him where he's being healed, and he gets sucked in by the embrace of this disgusting creature. I don't know if it's revealed what it is yet, but I know what it is. And it's just like breaks all his bones, but because he's being healed, they're constantly re-knit, but they're being re-knit distorted because he can't reform, because he's being crushed, and he's being nourished so he can't die. It's so disturbing, and it's so disgusting. And reading that K. Rool's like, listen, I'm going to send you to this. I know this is going to happen to you, but it needs to be done. It simply needs to be done. Adds another layer to it. And poor talk. So like, and in that speech to him, he's like, listen, like talks like, why should we be doing this? He's like compassion. We can't give up on these people that are in this cult. We cannot give up on them, which is obviously very important to the theme of this book is compassion and fighting for them. But that scene, man, where it's just like he gets caught. That's the scene where he realizes the Pandaman is like, or the seer is like a child, right? It really stuck with me the first time I read it too, like what happens to talk in this book, and it's just so disturbing. It's so disturbing, and I hate it. And I love talk, and I hate that this happens to him. But that's basically where we leave it. The end too ends with, because there's another great line with memories going back to the Maibi and like the Rivi people, where she's like, oh, like I used to like want death, used to, as in the last part, and she's not like, but now I know what death is like. It's like the spirits are nothing but memories of my people, which is like her pessimistic view of it. And Whiskey Jack is kind of like, do you ever think it's just like you're like projecting your insecurities onto like your belief of the afterlife? And she's like, shut up, Whiskey Jack, you're such an idiot. And she goes, ooh, he's right. But then we learned that she's like being visited by these dreams where it's like listen, like you're young in your dreams, and like we know like K. Rool has a lot to do with dreams. And also, side note, K. Rool said he learned compassion from Krupp. What a guy. What a guy. So we also learned that Krupp and K. Rool like are very, very entwined, and they still are. But they're like, she's young in her dream. They're like, listen, like, can you see us? It's like I think it's implied that it's the Rivi spirits, or maybe even said outright. They're like, listen, like just admit, like embrace us. And she's like, no, like you're torturing me with this dream, and she like rejects it. So it's another thing, I think I mentioned this last video too, it's like a lot of people under constant duress, constant pain. Paran rejecting his power, he's in a lot of pain. Gethel being slashed, immediately turning to the dark side. Kalor is the same way. The crippled god is someone that's constantly under pain. Talk now is under this embrace of constantly shifting his bones and breaking of them. He's in constant pain. The Maibi is being, her life force is being sucked out by her own daughter. She can't die. That's eternal pain. Whiskey Jack in his leg, a lingering pain. It's a lot there. It's a lot there. And Gruntle with this pain of his friend sacrificing himself for him. And Stony the same way. And also, what's his name? Buke, the other mercenary, the pain of his wife, he was dealing with that. And how he dealt with that was joining the necromancers, who we learned are like some crazy serial killers, which K. Rool gives him something to help with that, which is going to pay off maybe. It's kind of like a weird side plot. Anyway, a lot of characters and a lot of torment and a lot of pain, and we're seeing how they react to these things and how they adapt to them. I would say like this is like, this part feels like the most graphic part of any Malazan series. And like some crazy messed up stuff happened in Deadhouse Gates too, but it's just so visceral, I feel like, in this book. But you gotta love it. You gotta love it, guys. Just like I hope you loved this video. Be sure to like and subscribe if you liked it, because it apparently does something for you if you do that. It does something for me, I guess. I'm really enjoying doing this series so far. I feel like I always dread starting to film them, because I'm like, listen, like look at the clock, right? I'm like, I'm gonna be here for the next 25 minutes. Ugh. But then I realized that the only reason it's 25 minutes is because I start talking and then I can't stop because I like talking about it so much. So it's a lot of fun. I'm making my way through this book pretty good. We're definitely on track to finish this month. It's the 17th when I'm filming this. So I got 14 days, 2 weeks to read the last 2 parts, and we'll be on our way. And I'm loving it. Thanks for sticking around.